Welcome and hello, everyone. My name is Kelsey Wetzel, and I'm Connecting Young Nebraskans Executive Coordinator. At CYN, we connect young Nebraskans and empower them to lead and shape the future of our communities and state. We welcome both the young and the young at heart. As a former member of CYN's executive committee, Jonathan Jenk once said about CYN, "Come as you are for the time you are able to give." I want to thank you again for joining CYN's newest virtual program, We Need to Find Common Ground, Now What? Are you struggling to find common ground? Being a growth-oriented community, organization, or company can be difficult. You must engage in the work even when it involves difficult conversations. We are thrilled to begin this conversation today with three amazing panelists, Eva Jo Myers, Karina Perez, and Joan Sabat. Again, we appreciate you taking the time to join us in this conversation over your lunch hour. We are excited to continue offering the CYN Network programs in the Now What series. We truly hope you enjoy the program. Our goal is that you learn and develop some strategies and skills to hold difficult conversations. Upon completion of this program, we'll be sending out a brief survey to each one of you. Please fill it out. Your feedback will influence the content of CYN's future programming and the Now What series. If you have any questions or comments after today's program, feel free to contact me. My contact information will be provided in the contact box. And finally, we are excited to announce that CYN's 2023 Summit will be held exactly 1 year from today in Kearney at the Eunice Conference Center North in Crowne Plaza. Be sure to save the date, October 19th, 2023. CYN will begin to share updates in the coming months via email and on our social media sites. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to today's facilitator, Carlos Barcenas with I Choose Purple.
Hello, everyone. Again, I'm pretty excited to be here and have all of you virtually in the room. Excited because I just feel honored and privileged of knowing all of you and spending time with all of you at different places in Nebraska and connecting in the different areas and virtually from different parts of the United States as well. So thank you for being here. Just a quick commercial or reminder, connecting young Nebraskan. I'm one of those that continues to be young at heart. I have aged out, but I'm trying to hold on. But for us that are in the 20-ish to 40-ish, or still want to be committed to, making our communities grow, this is the place. So make sure that you invite your friends, co-workers. Really, we're trying to figure out a way to connect at a deeper level in Nebraska and help us all grow. I know that if it wasn't for many of you in the room, my leadership skills, my speaking skills, my connecting skills, I have been able to grow because all of you. So we want to continue to invite others and make this a place for connection. So quick today, I am honored to have three friends, three amazing women in their roles in Nebraska. They have made a difference in the work that I do. So feel free to, as you hear them speak, to either jot your questions down and you can put them in a note in the chat, or I did add slide 15, just add the questions there and we'll come back and add we'll ask them over a panelist. So I really have no certain order of who's going to go first. So, as I'm shuffling my computer, I might be just calling Eva or Karina or Joan here to speak first. But here's what we would like you to do and to know. Our last, I'm a CYNer, I'm part of this network. Now what? We have this conversation and we heard our participants say, we just want to know how to host or how to engage into difficult conversations. How do we engage into creating buy-in? And all three of you in your different worlds and your different areas in different communities, I know that you are an expert. You have experience in engaging and creating common ground. So you have a little bit of time to introduce yourself, give us a little bit of your background, and then really just the freedom to say, is there an example that you can share with the group, as well as are there some skills that you want to share with the group? So I am going to start with Karina Perez. She is the executive director at the Centro Hispano in Columbus, and she is a newcomer to the community, but now that community is home. You and I have had different conversations about conflict resolution, growth, common ground. So if you just, you can give it a virtual applause, Karina. The room is yours. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Um, well, there's not much more to me than that. I'm Karina and I'm excited to be here. My work at Centro Hispano is really about engaging community in a welcoming and belonging sense with the DEI lens, which is really embedded into all of our work. And so for us, I think Carlos is like really beautiful because the now what really is that common ground. Like for us, a point of solution has been to really approach everything with finding common places or common themes of connection with the communities that we're having a hard time connecting with. So whether it's approaching them, and so like the beginning of our work here at Centro, which is a big prime example of that, was how do we engage a growing demographic with a community that was a little resistant in very different ways. And so we can dive into that on another day, but the resistance on how they approach newcomers, on what the rhetoric was about newcomers. But what the focus that we did was approaching it on a business lens. So how do we merge these two communities together? And for us, it was finding common ground on business and entrepreneurship. Everyone wants to succeed, everyone wants to make money. And so we knew that was a common ground we could meet at when we started this work. It wasn't just about that, but slowly that work allowed us to really get into the meat of our work, which was equitable practices, equitable opportunities on the DEI side. And so that allowed us entry and like way to have this conversation where they were less conflictive and they were more on a listening scale. They were more approachable to us once we kind of broke ground, like, oh, they do see things the way we see them. And it was less about them versus us. It was about everyone wanting to make the community better. And so that's kind of how we've approached a lot of our work. It hasn't been easy. There still has been a lot of setbacks, and that's just the reality of the work that we do. But I will say that there's been more opening of doors because of that. There's more places that we've created at different tables because of that, being able to find common ground. And if there wasn't, allowing us the place to get others to be there. Because in one thing that we have found in this work, it couldn't just be us. We had to have multiple people that were also buying in, that were also advocating for us. Because our team can't do it alone. Like everyone wants to want the same thing for it to progress. And so it was more than just buy-in. It was, we all have to actively be doing it for it to be long lasting, sustainable change. And so I think that's where we're currently at, where we're all in this, we're creating the sustainable systemic change together, where it's not just, let's put it all on Centro, let's put it all on the chamber. It's everyone collectively now actively doing this together.
Awesome. And I'm going to just give you a couple of random thoughts and maybe you can build on it. I know that, you're talking about creating common ground, especially Columbus has a very diverse community, right? You're talking about immigrants, you're talking about people that have been in Columbus that call it home. There's no surprise that sometimes talking about immigration, talking about diversity, talking about immigrants in many communities, it's not an easy topic or comfortable topic to speak about. So you talked about one of the things that you, Centro Hispano, your leadership, and the chamber, and the key people that were in the community chose to focus on business. Like, let's make it a practical approach, a pragmatic approach. And one of the lines that I remember hearing in a conversation between you and I and Casey Bellitz was if we have 28%, I think that's what it is, 28% immigrant community or new community, can we really afford as a community not to engage 28% of our community? So I think that's amazing. Two things that I see if you can share a little bit more on. You talked about, we focused on businesses instead of focusing on it's an immigrant community. Are they here legally? Are here undocumented? Trying to fix that first. It was a we're all into business, and we're all into creating buy-in with the Latino community, entrepreneurship, and the Anglo community. Can you speak a little more of how do you start that? Let's focus on just one thing when somebody wants to say, well, immigration is also important, or the paperwork is also important. How were those conversations?
Well, I think the thing with that conversation is that for us, it's like that's every day for all of our immigrant families. So for us, it was like that's already embedded into like what we are as people. And so the point we want to get at is like their status doesn't matter if they want to have a business. What matters though for our community is economic development. And so let's look at that lens, which is the piece that matters to everyone, as much as this does to the immigrant individual who's trying to succeed, as equally as a person that has any other ordinary business where no one's asking their status. And so like we were kind of scraping past that surface level, like we're not here for the surface level information because that information is there every day. That doesn't pertain to whether their business succeeds or not. What we're here for is the meat of the work. Like, can their business survive in our community? What support does they need to survive in this community? And so like that's where the questions that really mattered were coming in. And as we were talking right now to Carlos, some things came to mind, and it's just like it wasn't a day and night thing, with like people stopped asking these questions because they're not. But I think what it allowed though was that now we're at the place where, our city's coming to us where they're like, we need to work on an immigration reform so that we can welcome refugees in our community and we're more approachable. And now because of all that groundwork, we're circling back to those questions that people probably would have thought we would have approached first. But we knew if we took the time to really engage the community on why these, and I'm specifically talking about immigrant communities now because that's my work, and so I apologize if it doesn't fit everyone right now in their community growth. But for us, now that we're circling back, they now have seen how these businesses, how these individuals who are our neighbors, our families, are benefiting our community. Now they're like, how do we create sustainability for them? Like, how do we assure that they have status? How do we assure that they can come over here and thrive as a business? And so now they're actively now asking those questions like, why isn't there something being done for them? And so I think it became a really full circle conversation. Now that we've laid that groundwork of common ground, now they're the ones also advocating alongside for what most would have thought would have been our leading conversation. And so it's really come full circle for us right now. And we're really excited to keep that momentum and that growth. Once again, talking about sustainability, how do we do this together as a community where this is more than just a one-off conversation or a one-off project where we're like, oh, today we're growing entrepreneurs. Then what are we doing next year, And so it's really about longevity here when we talk about this work.
Could you hear me at all? Can you hear me? Okay. I just had a message that said you're muted, and I'm like, I don't see anything that is muted. So sorry, guys. I freaked out there for a minute. So, Karina, no, and I think it's a valid point. It takes time and it takes being intentional. And I know that in Columbus, having those conversations, you have played a key role, having people that has those skills. So I'm gonna cue you with just if you could share one or two skills recommendations that you would give other communities that might be facing the same thing that you're doing. If you could just give me one or two things that you say, hey, this is what I would recommend. And from there, I'm gonna cue Joan, if you wanna get ready as soon. I'll give you, this is your call. But what is one or two things, Karina, you would say? Here's my recommendation to connecting young Nebraska network leaders or community leaders that are facing some of the same things that we face. Here's what I would say you need to do.
Lived experiences. I don't know how many times I've worked with communities and they are not at the table. So perfect to Carrie's question, working with the willing is like working with the community that you're with. Like the lived experiences matter at the table. If you have just, whether at the city level, whether at a chamber level, whether at just different board levels, you have communities that are dictating or speaking on behalf of a community. Like we feel that X, Y, and Z needs to be happening or is occurring. but they are not connecting with the local community on the ground. Now, I'm talking also outside of the services that you provide or the clientele you service, but community members who are living and breathing in your community, who are working at the manufacturing plants, who are working at the fast food restaurants, who are at different levels of leadership or rank. And so that to me is key. Lived experiences is what moves most of our work. And so if they're not the ones advocating and also saying like, this is what's missing, this is what we need, then the work that we're doing really is pointless. It's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to do anything because then no one's going to go to these things. No one's going to attend the city hall meeting, or no one's going to visit this business that, it approaches that, how businesses approach it too. Do you have someone you're going to sell to? Or would they buy your product? And that's the same way that I approach this work. Like in our case, our immigrant communities, is this what they want? Are they coming, like, what are they saying about what is still being said? How are they still being treated? And so those are the conversations that also need to exist and be had. I don't think we have spent much time anymore, Carrie, trying to change hearts and minds, but I think what we have done is staying true to our mission. And those who want to change, we will never change those that don't want. So as long as we provide them with the information that we know and we believe in, that will either create change or it won't. And so we're gonna keep moving. And I think a lot of times I think we find ourselves trying to change people's mind, and it takes a lot more work to do that than it is to collectively gather more people who are on the same page and keep on moving, like you said. So, and there's more power in that. I feel like there's a lot more groups than people think really moving the work forward. So, yes, I'll leave that there, but it does help with getting people at all levels of the work, in leadership, not leadership, also advocating and moving it all forward. So
That is awesome. Thank you so much. And I can actually give you a virtual applause. So thank you. Thank you. Make sure you guys, if you have notes or questions, keep asking them in the chat. I've seen the growth and I've seen the change. Many of us have. And it's something that it doesn't just happen overnight. So thank you. Thank you, Karina. Joan, you are up on the virtual platform. And thank you for being here. Joan, we've known each other for a while. And actually, I'm a school board member here in Grand Island. Joan helped us have some community conversations. And I don't think, well, maybe I'll leave on my own box, but I think we've made the news on a lot of stuff, and social media is pretty easy to share nowadays. So Joan has helped us through some conversations, and I thought, what better platform and to share some of your skills and where do we go? I think many times we know we want to do something, but we just don't know where to go. And we have so many talented people in our community. So thank you for being here. Same question of, what would you recommend? You've been doing this for a while, so I'll just give you the virtual platform and thank you for being here. So Joan.
Absolutely. So I think it'll be helpful maybe to hear a little bit about what I do and how I see kind of common patterns through all of the different work that I've done. So my background is in conflict all the time. That's all I've really ever worked in since I became a professional. So I went to school for conflict and negotiation at Creighton University, and then went on to do largely environmental public policy conflicts. So I worked at the federal and state level with all sorts of agencies working on really entrenched conflicts that were very costly, particularly troublesome, probably never going to go away, and probably never should go away. So again, environmental sector. So working in transportation issues, land use, airports in the middle of national parks. I mean, I worked on really weird and interesting issues. And what fascinated me the most about that, about helping communities through, national communities, even international, when you talk about a park like Yellowstone, you're talking about bringing a lot of people into the mix to make decisions, consider a lot of people's very heartfelt and deep rooted opinions on what decisions should be made, and a lot of pain when they're not made in the way that they want to go. I worked mostly in teams that work together over long periods of time. And I found myself leaning more and more into those types of ongoing relationship type of conflicts. And that led me to do a lot of consulting. And now I am the director of leadership and organizational development at Amore, which is an equipment finance company headquartered in Grand Island, but we have offices all over the United States. So I work with teams all the time on problem solving efforts inside. But as Carlos mentioned, I still do help out in community efforts, which is still a passion of mine. And, Karina said a lot of things that really resonated with me in terms of, that idea, work with the willing. Well, the willing are also not always the able or the ones who know anything about what you're doing, which, when I've worked on processes, I swear to you, so I've worked on national processes, state, local, I've worked on organizational, within a company setting. And there is a common theme that always runs through these things, which is that people forget how to engage every single time they're about to engage. It's like they forget that people can help them. It's like they forget that people should be included. It's like they forget that people are unaware of what's going on and should not be punished for that. Like one of the things, I worked on really weird issues in Colorado. I worked on bicycle issues throughout the state, how to make things safer and more user-friendly for all users on the roads. Again, very strange. But one of the things we found was that having public meetings was almost a joke, right? So we would do things like have go to thems. We would actually go onto the bike trails to have meetings with people who were commuting in the Denver metro area to talk to them and show them, hey, here's some maps we're working on. What do you think? Rather than expecting them to come to us, because you can post things on social media all day about something coming up and it doesn't, for whatever reason, they don't see it. It doesn't connect with them. They don't even know why they would go to it. There's the old fuddy-duddies who show up to those things and why would I want to go? And it replicates itself within organizations all the time that people don't involve the right people. They don't consider how they might be included. Look at our communities. Parents aren't showing up to parent-teacher association meetings. Why is that? They're not hospitable all the time. They're not procedurally sound for our evolving communities. There's all sorts of reasons people don't come, and it shouldn't always be their fault. It should be us as the organizers who are thoughtful. I always think engage and educate early. Be inclusive about who you include as a conflict voice. Don't assume that it's not a problem, because we all have great ideas, right? But not everybody agrees with us that they're great ideas. So out of everything, Carlos, to build on what Karina said, we have to be purposeful. We have to be thoughtful every time. And that doesn't mean reinventing the wheel every time. It means doing some good practice every time to include people in our work. But one of the things as I've gotten older that I've realized is that I think earlier on when I was engaging people in conflict, I was behaving a way that I thought they wanted me to behave. And now I just behave like myself and it works more than it did before in an odd way. But I really don't forget about good process every time you're doing something that involves even one other person. Procedural needs of people are so unbelievably important, and they impact how we feel. They impact if we feel psychologically safe. They impact if we feel like our voice is valued. It impacts if we have confidence in ourselves in those settings. So process in conflict is one of the, if not the most important piece of the puzzle to figure out.
No, thank you. A couple of things that just jumped out. I'll change my follow-up question as Eva gears up to come on the platform. I'm in a funny situation where I'm working with a group that has approached me and said, we're not on social media. So when you send me a message, I don't get it. We're not on social media, and very adamant, right? I'm like, I get it. Okay. But every week for the last 6 weeks, I've been getting a Facebook post message from this person. I'm like, you are on social media. So it can be frustrating.
Right.
But the point of how the way we engage, I think it's, yeah, I laughed. We all laugh because it's true. We forget how to, I have a podcast about engaging in comfortable conversations. And probably question number one that I get is, or in the work that I've done is, how do you engage? And it's so simple, right? It's like we all do it. We know how to do it. We just kind of forget. And things are also changing. So to your point of, let's have a process, but how do we challenge the process of things are different, especially generational, right? The way we do things, the way we engage. What would you say it's as something that we need to work to create this process where, yes, we need to have a process, but things look completely different than what they did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago with social media. And now we have so many people involved virtually that I think creates barriers. So I know I'm giving you a lot of random things here, but to the point.
And there's things in the chat that are
Perfect.
bringing up things.
There
So,
you go. So you're go.
so I don't know exactly what to answer. To be honest with you, I'm going to maybe
Everything.
start
You
with
have to
the, wait,
answer everything.
real quickly, Carlos. Can you restate your question?
Okay, so you to the point of process, to the point of, hey, let's
Yeah.
have a process, but how do you challenge those in the room? Because some of the things that we've heard from our Connecting Young Nebraska network, you have the young ones, younger than me, right? Saying, I'm a leader in my community, but I don't know how to engage the older, right? It's the generational, but also we have to have a process, but now politics gets in the way, religion gets in the way. And so how do you bring all of us at the table to that process?
Whew, that's a big question. So I would say, number one, no, rarely is a process perfect. And we need to sort of acknowledge that from the beginning, that we just have to try really hard to design and develop processes that work for people. And, it's funny when you talk about, like, a big project I worked on was Yellowstone National Park, their winter use, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's a very, very big deal. It's cost us, taxpayers, probably billions of dollars at this point. And it's going to continue to be a conflict forever. And you had a lot of emotions in the room. You had a lot of different opinions. You had a lot of different age groups, right? You have kids who care about it. You have there were people from China commenting on a US federal document about what's going on, right? How do we include all of these people? Number one, variation in process. Variation and access points to get it. Because, as a mom, I hate Facebook, but I have to be on Facebook. Otherwise, I know about nothing going on. I know no activities. I know nothing. I hate it. So I loathe it, yet I need it, right? We have to create different access points to get into our decision-making processes. Right now I'm working on a communication plan for our company, and that's all I'm doing is thinking about what are different paths to share information through our organization. So it's as many as we can possibly do within reason. It is doing things, somebody asked me more process points. Go to them. Do we have meetings? Do we not have meetings? Do we, one meeting I did, we literally just sat around in a public space with a bunch of aerial maps with markers and said, tell us how to make all this better. Just tell us how to make it better. Doesn't mean we're going to do it. You're very clear where you are in a process with people. Like, Carlos, love your ideas, but we're not making decisions. Like, you are not the decision maker, Carlos, right? That's the key. Setting boundaries, setting standards around where you are in the process and why you're at that point in the process and what the next steps are in the process, right? Knowing sort of, even though processes are rarely linear, you can map them out linearly and they never go that way, but you can give people a sense of where you are. But there's a lot of different process pieces that I embrace. But above all, the biggest process thing, if you're thinking about a young person and how do they engage with somebody who's older, it is the universal process strategy is ask a good question. Every time, ask a good question. We always feel like we, have to be I've gotten more comfortable just asking questions instead of feeling like I have to share a whole lot of information. Asking somebody a really good, thoughtful question about what they envision as a better future is an essential ingredient to get their buy-in to be folded into your process in a meaningful way.
That is awesome. And that's something that I'm working on. That's why people don't understand me, because I have very complex questions. So yeah, asking those questions is a good thing. So thank you. Thank you.
Happy to be here.
It's a great transition to, I know both of you are not only, great facilitators as well. Eva, she is an author. She's a great facilitator. She has touched a lot of lives in Nebraska. So we met through virtually when COVID hit. I hated this idea of Zoom meetings and engaging. And then I heard her say, if you're a good presenter, you don't need PowerPoint. And then, man, that hurt me, because I need my PowerPoint slides to do a good presentation. But she is a great facilitator who really works in the DI space as well, and has created virtual spaces of complex conversations. To your point, Joan, what you were sharing of how you do multiple points. So Eva, the floor is yours. If you want to share a little bit about you and some of the things that you do. I think you have a lot of the context of Karina and Joan, and I'm still trying to come up with a good question. So I think if you want to share with us what your experience has been, that would be awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful for networks like this. I love communities of practice like this. And so I just really appreciate being beamed in from California today to get the wisdom that you all are sharing. I'm like taking notes frantically here. So I have a question for the group, if you wouldn't mind just really quickly putting into the chat. When you're thinking about finding common ground in today's theme, what are the settings that you're in? Like, what kind of meetings are you leading, or are they classes, or are they, like, what is it that you are doing where you're experiencing these conflicts? So if you wouldn't mind just dropping that in the chat, that'll help me. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. This is helpful. Thank you. Ooh, yeah. So I met Carlos because I had this workshop that I was doing with a colleague who happens to be based in Nebraska on switching your meetings to a virtual setting that we made free available at the beginning of COVID when everyone was going into lockdown. And literally thousands of people were coming through this workshop. So we needed more facilitators. So Carlos, forever grateful, stepped in and helped us in that project. And so yeah, when I was growing up, I just said to my parents, when I grow up, I want to be a professional facilitator. I just always knew. Not like, what the heck is a professional facilitator? And I still feel like I go to parties and have to like explain what I do to people all the time. But at its heart, like, being a facilitator just means to make things easier, honestly. And that's what I try to do when I get brought in somewhere, is just make whatever the thing is easier. And so mostly what I'm doing is I do a lot of work around professional development and professional learning. And then also process facilitation, like strategic planning or project development and management. So I appreciate hearing the kinds of groups that you're working with and the settings you're working with is very aligned with the kinds of settings I'm working with. A lot of my work has been in school districts and city agencies. So part of what happened was, just before the pandemic, I had also written my first book, which is called Raise the Room. And it's to answer this question, like, what are some of the processes you use? Basically, I wrote down all of the processes I used and I put them into a book. And they're I tried to make it like really clear and easy to use. And now I have a second book coming out in 2023 that's sort of similar, like a practical handbook to building community. And it kind of takes this idea of leading a meeting one step further and facilitating a meeting into like, how do you create community with that? So even a place like this, how do we work on making this interactive, engaging? People feel ownership over the process. They feel ownership over the outcomes. How do you inspire people to want to transform? And I really heard that in what Karina was sharing, and then also in what Joan was sharing. And in the resource thing, I shared this book. I just did a book club with this book yesterday. If you haven't read Emergent Strategy yet, Adrienne Maree Brown, we had a book club yesterday on it. I've read this book so many times. It's one of those books that you can just open to a page and read something and be like, yeah, that's what I'm going to try to do today. And so this quote that I wrote down was, less preparation, more presence. And I'm really trying to embrace that now for myself. Like, how am I, Joan said we get into a space and we immediately forget all the things we know. But like, how am I getting into a space and being like, okay, you know what, everyone? We've been sitting already for 30 minutes listening. Let's look away from our computers for a minute and stretch. I'm not kidding. Let's do it. Like, it's hard to listen for a long time and our eyes get tired. And we tend to hunch our shoulders and not breathe fully into our bodies. So like, these like 4-hour board meetings that stretch into school board meetings that stretch into 6 hours, and we're still there at midnight and we haven't gotten up for a potty break in 3 hours. Like, how are we really holding a community when we're not even taking care of like those basic things of our presence? So I do have this tool that Carlos wanted us to engage in today, which is, it's called peer coaching. And I actually, like, if I were able to erase my book and change the word, I would call it peer centering instead, because I think coaching has a context to it now that wasn't really there when I was working on the book a couple of years ago. But it's this idea that, and my whole book is about this, like, how do I remove myself from being the center of the conversation? As the leader of an organization, as the leader of a project where I feel so invested on the success of the outcome, how do I step back and let the group be the ones who are leading the process, who are feeling ownership over every single part of that? And so the peer coaching tool that we'll use in a minute, it's one tool that I use so that people can just get into smaller groups, right? Because a big group gives us no airtime. This is more than I ever talk in any session I lead. Really, I'm usually like 5 minutes, give a little context, give an instruction, and then boom, we're in breakout rooms talking and doing a thing. Or if we're in person, we're in small groups. So the peer centering tool just gives people an opportunity to talk and just get some clarity of their own thoughts, of their own feelings about, and come to some understanding on their own without another person doing anything other than listening. And maybe asking a question like, well, what have you tried? Or what could you possibly do differently? Because we don't really get listened to deeply a lot, especially when we're upset about something or we're in conflict. Often the listener is so busy preparing their response and their reaction that they're not like really listening. So even to have just any kind of peer to listen to you for a few minutes can be really helpful to get clarity. So I'll pause there to see if there's any questions before we get into trying out the tool.
now that I've been learned a lot, and I approach groups and they ask, we need to do this, and when you can do a retreat over Zoom that is a day or two long, and people are thinking, no, that's not possible. It's amazing what even in Zoom retreats whole day, and you're engaged through phone calls, book reads. It's amazing. But anyway, I'm going to give you a chance to ask a couple questions, and I think everyone is enjoying the conversation and really learning a lot. So we're going to just shift a little bit. And here's what we'll do: we'll still give you the time to have this center conversation because it's awesome. I think it just helps us remember what to do. So what we're going to do is just give you that time. But before we go to that, are there any questions for both Eva and Joan that either unmute or just put it in the chat? Let's take the next couple minutes to do that.
Well, I want to just add something to what Eva said that I thought was when she talked about being present. You can make preparations all day long. And in fact, facilitators are often the most over-prepared human beings on planet Earth. And then you literally, like when I learned the mediation process, I was like, I need to forget this process now because I'm so obsessed with where we are in the process that I'm forgetting to actually listen to these people who want to strangle each other. And I need to be more present so they don't strangle each other. So prepare, and then totally forget what you prepared.
Yeah. No, I love it. And it was a life changer for me. And I'm still working on a few things. And, sadly, if you gotten to know me and hang out with me, I'm constantly in chaos. So less preparation and more presence. Hey, I'm all in. The only drawback is that when people see me, they see conflict. So, but no, it's good. So what other questions? We have, I believe one in the chat. What tips do you have balancing preparation and presence?
Oh, yeah. And I promised Carrie I'd answer this question. So I'm going to plant two birds and answer both questions with the same response answer. So I saw some of this, this idea of, I call it creating the container, like what agreements for engagement do you have with each other and how do you come up with those? And I call them setting intentions. I know in mediation, there's probably like a set of rules or something. And obviously Robert's Rules of Order says like different ways you can engage. But some of the intentions that I like to set are have fun, be open to new ideas, meet somebody new, try on a different way of thinking, push myself outside my comfort zone, speak if I don't usually speak, be silent if I'm usually always the first one to speak. So that is a form of preparation, but actually what it's doing is creating a space where we can be more present. And I like to involve people in the process of developing that. I have actually a set of cards that I lay out on the table that has all of those suggestions. And I invite people to pick one up as they come into the room. What do you want to hold for yourself today? Resist checking my cell phone for the entire meeting. That's a card I like to put out. That is usually the first one that gets picked up. So, that is that's one way to help us all be more present. And then the other thing is to build your agenda with a lot of time, wiggle room time, so that you can have those side conversations and a paper on the wall for a parking lot for when you don't have time for that conversation, but you want to be present and acknowledge that that topic needs to be discussed. Hey, we only have 10 minutes. That's not going to do this justice right now. Let's put it on this parking lot and come back to it at our meeting next week and really center it and give it the time it deserves. So that's some ways that I would balance preparation and presence. And yes, I can drop the link to where you can find the cards.
That is awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to go against everything you just said. So we don't have a lot of time, but actually, so if you don't have the presentation, I just send the link. You're going to find the instructions, and Eva, I think you do a better job explaining what we're about to do. And we're just going to give you 4.5 minutes. So close to 5. Okay. You're going to go into pairs. I'm going to pass it on here to Eva here shortly. When we come back, we're going to wrap this up, but please enjoy, engage, have fun. So Eva, if you can give us the next steps Also, the deck that I'm using is part of the design that I learned from Eva and has their logo and their link available. But we're going to take the next 5 minutes. You're going to go in pairs and practice this tool. We'll come back and engage once again. So Eva, if you can give us the instructions, and Kelsey will send us into breakouts.
I think this is a pretty savvy group. So all I'm going to say is when you get into the room, person whose name is closest to the top of the alphabet, just to make it quick, you go first. If you don't know each other, introduce each other really quick before you start, and then set a timer just to divide the time so that you each have whatever it is going to be, 2 minutes, 3 minutes per person. And this exercise is more for the listener than the speaker. So as the listener, really see how well you can be present in your listening, what's coming up for you. If you feel like you're taking on their emotion, try to let it go through you. Try to turn off your right reflex, like you're going to want to fix it. So try to turn that off for yourself and just really hear what the other person is saying. And not out of curiosity or anything else, but just because you want to understand and hear and let this person feel heard. So think for a minute before we go in the room, what's a problem you're facing right now that you'd feel comfortable sharing? So that if you met the person tomorrow in the supermarket, you wouldn't feel super embarrassed about what you had shared, right? So like share on the level you're comfortable with. And that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Kelsey, let the magic happen and send us into breakout.
Okay, here we go.
Welcome back. I'm giving you magic music for all of you coming back. So, all right, you want to pull them all in? Just pull them all in. Say, hey, we're bringing you back. I'm going against every rule that I've learned. Sorry, magic happened and we have to bring you back. So, hey, I know this is going to go really quick. We're really grateful. I know Karina had to go to another meeting. Joan, Eva, I am super grateful for just your time. I respect and admire all the work that you're doing, and you're always willing to share and to be part of community. So for all of you that are attending, you have the slide deck. I would just ask you that when you have some time today, go to slides 20, 21. And if you're looking for help, if you're looking or you want to offer, this is all about networking and mentoring and connecting. I would love that we had more time to hear how the coaching or the centering sessions went. Make sure you share that. And I want to offer this. Kelsey's going to send you a link to a survey. So we get your feedback. We're going to send it to everybody that attended, and get your name in there, because if your name is in there, I'm going to throw one on Eva's book, and we're going to pick a random number, and we're going to send you raise the room for you. So make sure you fill out and that includes Karina and Joan. Okay. So fill out everything. Let us know how it went. So I know we are right at 1 o'clock. Is there any final thoughts? Anything you want to put in the room before we leave?
I feel like we could almost have another session about this where we can do that peer coaching piece, because the 3 minutes really wasn't enough.
So what I heard you say, hey, is let's just do a one-off about going through this centering, and maybe we can have.
Pair us up.
Perfect. I like it. Awesome. Anything else? You guys, go ahead, Joan. I saw you lean into the mic. Thought you were going to sing. I get to see some of you tomorrow.
No, just leaning. Oh, sorry.
Leaning into discomfort, right? Thank you, Kelsey. If you want to close us out, I'll be seeing some of you tomorrow.
Thank you, everybody. And don't forget, save the date, October 19th, 2023, the next CYN Summit in Kearney. Have a great day.
Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your night.